I'm known in my family to be the political one, so a lot of my family members are a bit scared to have conversations with me, but I
Good.
love having those discussions.
Let's begin the Futures Edge podcast. I'm Jim Urio, as always, brains behind the operation, Bob Iacchino, co-host, executive producer. So you guys who watch the Futures Edge, you know that 75% of the time we talk about markets, we talk about deep economics, and we go pretty deep. But occasionally we break trend, which is even a trading term. We break trend and we go with something that's different. We had Dr. Robert Malone on the show because we felt that he was treated unfairly in the media. We had Vivek Ramaswamy on the show early in his campaign because we felt his voice wasn't getting amplified enough. By the way, there's a theme there. Voices that aren't getting amplified enough and aren't getting play in major media, which is one of the reasons we started this, is to get away. Bobby and I have been in, this is for you, Briana, Bobby and I have been in mainstream media for 20 years. And we found out there was just a tremendous amount of bullshit going on with what you're supposed to say and you can't say. And by the way, if you say anything, and if we get you riled up and you say anything in this that you're like, oh shit, I might get in trouble for that, just tell us and we'll strike it out. But feel free to say whatever you want. So we have Briana Whatley, who's a national debate champion. And one of the things, this was so inspiring when I was listening to you on Newsmax, because here's the quote. And I felt like if you were a football coach, I would have strapped my helmet on and killed for you. You said, as in debate, they teach you to adapt to your audience, but adapting to your audience does not mean conforming to your judges, and I will not stand for it. You are our kind of people for that. I loved it. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. Tell us about yourself first. You're in Florida, right?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I'm from Florida. I grew up in South Florida specifically, and I've been going to school in Broward County, which is predominantly very involved in debate, actually. I was in fourth grade when I first found out about debate. My teacher had told me about it, and I fell in love with the idea. So ever since, in sixth grade, seventh, eighth, I would take debate as an elective. And once I got into high school was when I actually had the opportunity to compete with other students.
So can you turn it off? Like when you're sitting at the dinner table with your parents or you're out with a boy and they say something that irritates you, do you twist them into mental knots with your debate skills? Just say yes.
No, you're not wrong. Absolutely. Yes.
I married a trial lawyer, and I realized early in our marriage is that we're just trying to figure something out. We're married. We're just trying to get to the bottom of something. And like she's like doing this tactical thing. I'm like, stop! You're not making an
Oh
argument
my
here.
God.
We're just trying to figure out the best way to proceed here. So,
Hey, Jimmy, so I didn't know that. So my first wife was also a trial lawyer. So I didn't know
Really?
that. And one of the things I could not stand was like, hey, hon, I'll be home at around 12, right? Get home at 1 a.m. She's like, you said you're going to be home at 12. Yeah, I know, but there was this protest and it was, did you or did you not? Sir, say you were going to be home at 12. I'm like, oh my God, stop. I remember doing that in arguments, hence the divorce. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. My wife is pretty cool, so we managed to work it through, but it was a problem. So, okay, you've come to some national media attention, and I think it's fascinating. You were in a debate. They tried to censor you for speaking about Donald Trump. What do you think that's rooted in? What is the issue with censorship right now? Is it just fear from the left? And to give you a little bit of background, Bobby and I are not Republicans. We are not Democrats. We tend to be libertarian. We don't like big government. I think Donald Trump was meh, which is so weird that everybody either despises him or loves him. I thought he was pretty good. You know what I mean? I thought he was a pretty good policy president. He could have been a little nicer to people. So that's where we stand. So tell me about your experience.
Right. So this was a tournament back in March of this year, and it was the national qualifiers, right, to get to the national tournament. And we were having a debate on Biden's foreign policy track record. And so I was going to make a healthy comparison to the previous administration by mentioning President Trump. So, for instance, when looking into the Middle East, I was going to refer to the Abraham Accords, which was established under his administration, right? Before I even began to speak, my judge told me that it was inappropriate to mention Trump. And at the time, I was, pumped up with adrenaline, so I didn't think much of it until after the fact. I thought, wait, this is a whole other side of the debate that I could have brought up that would have been really important. And so the question that you were mentioning earlier, I think people are scared to have their perspectives and opinions challenged. And so that's why the judge didn't want me to mention another valid side of the debate, because it would just completely contradict her own personal beliefs.
So does that mean that a debate is essentially rigged when that's the case in your view?
I could think so. Yes, it is rigged because, in a sense, you're not allowing for this new argument to be brought to the table that would bring a lot of perspective and value. And also, it's being rigged because now you're only allowing certain viewpoints that coincide with yours. And so it is rigged in that sense.
So
So
I love to debate on a personal level. I don't know if I could have made the debate team because that means the other people are prepared, and I like to surprise attack people who aren't thinking that I'm going to argue with them. But can you, just for people who've never seen a debate, and by the way, I've never seen any debate footage until we found out that we were going to have you on the show. And it's fascinating. Number one, are you guys allowed to breathe? I mean, some of these kids they talk so fast, I assume because there's a time limit. You can just kind of go over what debate is, how it works, what the rules are, written and unwritten. How does it work?
Right. So there are different types of debate events that students can compete in. The ones that I've done is called congressional debate, which is mock Congress. Usually give 3-minute speeches. So that's when you'll see students speaking really fast because they have to get all of that in 3 minutes. And then there's also a different type of debate, which I did, which was called extemporaneous debate, where you get a topic, you have 30 minutes to prepare, and then you present a speech, and usually there's questioning between students that follows.
Who does the
what?
question? I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
Tim.
So usually you give the speech and then another student will question you based off of your speech and you'll go back and forth.
So which one do you think is a better form of debate in terms of training you for your adult life, or which one do you find more fun either way?
So I like both because in Congress we talk a lot about foreign and domestic policy, and but I like extemporaneous speaking because it trains you to be able to speak off the cuff, and it also you learn a lot about, especially foreign policy aspects, you learn a lot about that stuff happening around the world. And so I think extemporaneous speaking is best for when you're trying to prepare for the real world because it helps you to be able to speak off the cuff.
Where I have a question now. Where's your top three choices for where you'd go to school to continue your education when you leave high school?
Right. So my top three choices, I'm in 11th grade, so I've been, narrowing that list down. But I really want to go to school in DC. That's my goal. Either Georgetown, American University, or here in Florida, I've been thinking about University of Florida.
Okay, so do you worry? Okay, so I rarely talk about this, Bobby. I'm not even sure if you know this. My second daughter, you got a 36P on the ACT, meaning she got every question right. She was one of the
Mhm.
top athletes in the state and did charitable work all the time. She didn't get into about 8 different colleges that she applied to. When she was writing out her Duke essay, I remember her telling me, because at the time she was pretty religious and she was writing about her faith. And I remember telling her, being a Christian, a Catholic, a Roman Catholic, that's going to count against you. And she's like, the hell with it. I don't care. If it counts against me, it counts against me. Um, are you worried that coming across as a conservative, and by the way, I think I just made a jump there. Just wanting to be able to talk about Donald Trump doesn't mean you're a conservative. Do you consider yourself a conservative?
I do consider myself a conservative.
So do you worry that that's going to keep you out of some of the schools you want to go in?
Absolutely. I know
Good
that it will because of what I've seen that's happening today.
God, what a high level of bullshit that is, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
amazing to me.
it is.
And it blows me away. I heard you also speak in Newsmax about, you debated about affirmative action. And my beliefs have been this way. If I believe that if the needle is both the same, if everything for these two candidates is the same, I have no problem from a kid from a less represented, underprivileged getting the nod, but only and only if the everything is the same. Otherwise, I believe in the meritocratic policies. Where do you stand on that?
Right. So the thing that you mentioned was that the National Speech and Debate Association, they have these questions that they set up for debates, right? And one of them was, how does affirmative action benefit Black Americans? And the way that the question is posed, you can't really challenge the idea that affirmative action could be a detriment. Now, I personally believe that affirmative action is not benefiting anyone. It's a form of, a bias towards people. I don't care where you come from, the color of your skin. It's about who you are as a person and what you've worked towards, right? But in a debate, that shouldn't be implemented in any way. So either side of the coin, you shouldn't be proposing a question that negatively highlights affirmative action or positively. And that's the issue that I have with the NSDA. They'll pose these questions and they'll shed it in their light, in their perspective of how they want students to debate it.
So what happened in there was a debate, and I don't know if you were involved in this one. I just remember James Fishbeck, who's a friend of mine, a friend of yours, obviously, started something called Incubate Debate. Jimmy, I don't even know if you know this, but
I've heard him talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, James was involved in debate as a high schooler, and he said it changed his life. And very successful guy, very smart guy. And he started this Incubate Debate in part because of what's been going on with high school debate. Maybe entirely, because I haven't talked to him in that much detail about it. So what happened in the debate where they penalized someone for their whiteness?
Right. So I watched this.
By the way, go on. I'm just going to stop.
Yes, it was okay. This was a very prestigious tournament. It was called the TOC, Tournament of Champions, and it was through Zoom. And so what will happen lately is that students will completely change the assigned topic. So let's say in my case we were debating Biden's foreign policy. They'll just completely change it and say, "Hey, here's a more pressing matter that we want to talk about." And in this instance, it was trans students in the debate space and how they were being targeted. I'm not sure how trans students are being targeted on Zoom debates, but I guess they were. And so
you are our kind of people, Briana.
Yeah, so I guess they were being targeted, so they had to shed a light on it. And so they completely changed it to speak on that. And so the other team actually forfeited and said that they wouldn't debate because they didn't want to undermine trans students. And so the other student said that because of the other team having a white member, that they couldn't make any arguments based off of that they couldn't, speak on those issues because they're white. It's just, I don't understand what's going on in debate
It's
today.
confusing.
It is. Yes. And then you were talking about Incubate Debate, which I've actually been a part of for 3 years now. And
Wow.
I can say that Incubate is completely different from what the NSDA is doing. I've met students that are across the board from different political views, and none of us are punished for exerting those beliefs and round. And the problem with the NSDA is that they keep saying they want safe debate spaces. But the problem with safe debate spaces is that it's not supposed to be safe. You're supposed to have your challenges you're supposed to have your views challenged because that's how you learn and become more open-minded. At Incubate, you can't say anything and think that you're going to be safe because you get those views challenged, right? And it makes us better people, not just better debaters, but better people when we actually have to defend our beliefs.
So, can I go, Bobby, or no?
Yeah, go.
Because as long as we're on the trans thing, like I have no understanding of how I'm supposed to fit into this trans debate. Perhaps you can shed some light on it. Bobby and I are who consider ourselves social liberals. We just don't want to pay for shit. Like what am I supposed to like? What does it matter to me if someone wants to dress like a cat or dress like a woman if they're biologically man? I don't give a shit. Like, what is it that they want from me? Do I have to like vocally say that it's okay? Is that what they're looking for, do you think? Again, I don't know what non-binary means. I don't know what queer means. I always thought that was a bad term, and now apparently it's not. I'm very, very confused, which, by the way, I am perfectly comfortable in my confusion with it. What the hell's going on here?
I'm confused too. Okay? I'm not sure what we're supposed to do. I don't know what they want us to do because I remember one of the students saying that just declaring that trans students should be protected is not enough. We need action. So I don't know what that action is, but I don't know. It's just that the debate space has been completely hijacked by this belief that every kid is being attacked in some way, shape, or form, when that's not what debate is supposed to be. I'm lost. I'm lost as well.
Okay, good. Bobby?
So so now I'm about to ask a question that is going to sound like one of the loaded debate questions. So I've been trying to sit here and figure out how to reword it, and screw it. I'm just going to ask it the way I ask it. You are empirically black. I mean, you're a black person, right? Okay. So do you
He
get
starts out like a lawyer making his argument. Stated for the record.
I have empirical evidence for this. No, but so do you get offended by the accommodations that they try to make? Um, Go
Yes.
ahead. You look like
Yeah,
you want to answer that.
absolutely. Yes. My mother is actually, I'm mixed. I'm Cuban and black, and my mother is an educator, right? And she's always, I don't come from money, but I've had that foundation with having a two-parent household, right? And I'm blessed in that way. Right. And so I don't need somebody to tell me that I'm disadvantaged because of because of my skin color, or even because of where I come from, right? What school I go to. What I need people to understand is that we shouldn't have to look we shouldn't have to look at each other based off of our skin colors anymore, not in this day, because it doesn't determine anything about how we act or how we behave. And so the idea that we need accommodations in the debate space is completely ridiculous. What we need is respect for each other and not to be belittled within the debate space.
But now, to just add a point to that, I mean, you've experienced some racism in your life. Everyone has. I mean, here and there. Anything you can point to? And actually, no, never mind. Let me say this instead. The thing that bothers me the most, and you could debate me, critique me, agree. The thing that bothers me the most is the idea that people getting treated differently is somehow exclusive to a difference in race or something else. And what I mean by that is Jim and I have experienced racism being Italians. We find it funny because Italians are so arrogant and just like self-possessed that we find it kind of funny. But whenever I grew up in an Irish neighborhood that was also filled with Italians, but the Italians were third and fourth generation. So they just seemed like what we would call spaccones to me. They were just kind of like fakers, right? And they would say a lot of Italian words incorrectly. And I spoke Italian before I spoke English, granted dialect, but still, I would hear them mispronounce words and they were just kind of like, I don't want to be around you guys. You're faking it, right? So I hung around with a lot of Irish guys. And I constantly had Italian comments made in my direction. I still have friends that'll reach out to me and go, hey, I thought about you yesterday. I was watching Goodfellas. And I'm like, you don't think about me like when you're watching Lincoln or I don't know, Ford versus Ferrari? Well, I guess they would with me on that. So I don't understand why it's considered to be an exclusive thing like that, number one. And number two, why these tiny experiences of racism shouldn't be just events where you roll your eyes and go, this person, you're a racist, so you're an idiot. You don't affect my life. Am I off base on this at all?
Yeah, I understand completely what you're saying. There's actually a judge. There's a website called Tab Room where judges will put their preferences for debates. So usually they're supposed to say, oh, don't speak too fast. I like when you emphasize an impact, blah, blah. But today, judges just use it to blast their personal beliefs. One of them actually said that they'll penalize non-white students for being anti-black, right?
What does
And
that mean?
what I don't know. Again, I don't know. So, I don't know. And so the idea of being racist towards white people or people of white descent has been so minimized today and normalized, not just within the debate space, but in our country in this modern day. And I don't understand where it's coming from because it's completely antithetical to what our country stands for. We're not, I feel like we're kind of reversing how it's supposed to be. Instead of being racist towards people of color, now it's white. I'm confused as well because it's not what our country should be like today based off of our principles.
That's fascinating. I just relay a quick story about what you said, Bobby, about a defining principle. Like we grew up, we're both late 50s, and I was at my high school reunion a year ago, and there's a guy by the name of Ray who came out as being gay, probably 20 years ago. And I said to him, was any one of your friends, anyone we went to high school with, did they give you a hard time? And he goes, Mike, so they're a mutual friend of ours. He goes, he gave me a very hard time. It was very, very hurtful, whatever. And then about 10 minutes later in the discussion, he said, he goes, I enjoyed talking to you. When I come to town, Mike and I always go to dinner. Will you join us? And I thought, this 10 minutes ago, he just told me about it. This guy made his life miserable. And now, he's just like, in his mind, it was like, there's a whiteboard of things that I judge him on. Yeah, he was a dick when I came out, and he's not a dick now. There should be a little more forgiveness as people evolve. I don't know where I'm going with this. It was more of a sermon than anything else, but I think that we agree on this.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? After I spoke out about what happened and I had the opportunity to go on Fox and on national media, this all happened the last week of school, right, in June. And something told me on the last day of school not to go to school because I didn't tell my debate coach that I was going to do it. And I was right not to go to school because I get a lengthy text a week later from my debate coach about how I'm lying. And if I'm not lying, then what happened to me doesn't really matter. And for a long time, I didn't really want to talk about what my debate coach did to me. But today I'm over it and I'm ready to speak about it. Into the summer, he actually called my mom to talk about how he was concerned about me speaking out on this topic. And I had been president of my team for 2 years. And when I went back this August, he told me I could no longer be president of our speech and debate team because I could not represent our school anymore because I had criticized the NSDA. And the way that I look at this is, my mom is a teacher, same as my debate coach. They criticize the school board a lot and they work for them. They're not getting fired for it, for criticizing them. So me as a student, part of this organization, I should be able to criticize the organization and still be a part of it. And so, I've been taken away the opportunity to go to tournaments with my friends anymore because I can no longer represent our team. All because I spoke out, which is kind of funny. I get kicked off my speech and debate team for speaking out.
So you got fully kicked off, not just removed as president. You got kicked off the team?
Right. So, the first week of school, he told me I could no longer be a part of the team. When my mom got involved and talked to the assistant principal, he switched up the story and said I could join, but I could not be president.
Go ahead, Jamie. I'm just wildly angered by this. Really
so Briana, my history too. I worked a lot in major media until things started to get weird a few years ago, and they told me what I could and couldn't say, and I kept telling them to go fuck themselves. And then we got to this impasse where I couldn't be on anymore, which is fine. One of the reasons, same with Bobby too. And I think that's one of the reasons we like you and we're drawn to your story because it's similar to ours, because you can just push people far enough, and then it's like, no, to hell with you. I said in my exit interview, I said, I'm not saying my integrity isn't for sale. I'm just saying you're 2 zeros too short. I thought that was funny. They did not think it was funny. So my question though to you is that we're at this part in our society now where this is gathering steam. The things we were talking about and how ridiculous it is, cancel culture, a thing about you accept what we say or you're racist, fascist, film, whatever word. What are we supposed to do? Are we doing it right now? Is all we're supposed to do is keep swinging?
I mean, again, I don't have a complete answer for you, but all I know is that as long as we keep fighting and we keep speaking out the way that we want to speak, things will happen and people will realize that what they're doing is wrong, right? And so, I'm going to continue to speak out, whether it be on X or at debate tournaments, right? If I had the chance to do it again and be in that round where that judge told me not to bring up Trump, I would bring up Trump. Even if I were to be penalized for it, I would do it 100%.
Can we talk about what your view on that was? Do you remember your points on that? I'm not sure how long ago that was, because I'd love to hear you prepared for an IMF debate where they then told you not to talk about certain things, and you prepared for the Biden foreign policy debate. Do you remember any of those points, or do you have an opinion you want to share?
Right. So with the President Biden's foreign policy record, we were supposed to assign him a letter grade. And this is actually funny. I gave him a C because I was scared that my judge. Yeah. I gave him a C because I was kind of scared that my judge would penalize me if I gave him too low of a grade, which was a form of self-censorship now that I think about it, right?
Oh my
Um,
God. It's so
yeah.
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it happens without you even realizing. And so I know that I brought up the southern border and how policies aren't working there currently. What else did I bring up? I brought up the southern border, the Middle East. I was going to bring up the Abraham Accords, could no longer bring up that point. Um, but with the IMF debate, actually incubate debate recently, we did our own IMF debate on that. And I actually made the argument in favor of IMF, saying that it could be a great way to combat China and their BRI, Belt and Road Initiative.
Mm,
Okay.
that's great.
Wow. That's interesting. He knows more about the shit than we do, which is kind of embarrassing to me. But that was fantastic. Okay. When I laid it out before of what our political views are, do you think yours mirror that, or do you consider yourself a Republican, or do you consider yourself an independent who leans conservative?
I would consider, well, right now I consider myself a Republican. Soon, I've been procrastinating, but I'm going to pre-register to vote soon, and I believe I'm going to register a Republican for now. Um, at school, I'm labeled the crazy Trump supporter because I've been very vocal about my, opinions when we have class debates and whatnot. And I'm actually the only student in my class who stands for the Pledge of Allegiance, which I find crazy to me every day when the morning announcements comes on, my peers, they'll tell me, "Oh, Briana, go stand." I will happily.
Good for you.
It
Good for
baffles
you.
me how students just don't respect our country anymore. That they think that standing for the Pledge of Allegiance is an act of racism. Beyond me. I try to have conversation with my peers, but they just don't listen.
Okay, there's some peers though. I mean, tell me this hasn't cost you everything socially, has it? You have friends, you have people who see what you are as a whole. Yes, tell me that, please.
Yes, no, of course. I haven't lost friends based off of my views. It's just something more of they make fun of me for, which is I'm completely fine with that.
That's
Um,
actually
you
great.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm completely okay with that. I like having conversations with them. Some of my friends, they're able to understand where I'm coming from. But I haven't lost friends because of it. More of just something that, they mention to, make fun of.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. So tell me, you watched, I assumed you watched the Republican presidential debate last week, did you?
I didn't have the opportunity last one, but I did watch the last two.
And what do you think of them as candidates? Is there anyone? I'm not necessarily going to ask who you support. I will ask that actually. Who do you support? Is there someone who stands out to you as someone who's a go-getter and says the right things?
Someone that came on your podcast, Vivek Ramaswamy. I love him. I think that he's the
Yeah.
epitome of the candidate that we need to lead our country 100%. I like the way how, he has his very own podcast and he'll bring on people that have opposing views of his to have real debates and conversations. And that's what I really love about Vivek is that he's real, right? And he likes to have these conversations with people across the country.
That was
Well, I
another,
love.
Jimmy, that was another example I sent to our mutual friend when he was trying to write a bio. I said, here's a presidential candidate and talks about how he was a nationally ranked tennis player. So
Oh,
those are my,
that works, and yeah.
go
That's
ahead.
cool. I hope one of the things I like, and this is just a guilty pleasure of mine. I'd love to my friends who are on the left and they accuse us of being these old white racists and be like, "Oh yeah, no, he's a brown candidate. Oh, I didn't notice." You know what I mean? Yeah, you guys make a big deal on that shit. I could give a crap what color he is or what gender he is if he has the policies that I want. So what do you think when you look back at Trump's presidency? I assume you think from a policy standpoint it was good. What policies did he institute that you thought were particularly beneficial to us, to the country?
Right. So, under his administration, there were no new wars, right? Which is something that is not common within presidential administrations, right? There's something, I talked to my friends about President Trump, and they mention how he's supposedly this racist, right? And when I break out the fact that he's given more money to HBCUs than every president ever combined, they're completely shocked. And so when I bring up how President Trump has actually contributed to help the Black communities, people are just completely, they don't want to listen to that, right? They want to listen to what they've seen on the media and heard from that.
Have you ever read the book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X?
I have not.
So it's one of my favorite books. Bobby, have you?
Yeah, I have.
Because Malcolm X, prior to his death, goes into this quite a bit about how divisive and how the left loves to convince victimhood because that's how they drum up support. And Malcolm X was not a fan of Republicans, but he said with Republicans, you know where they stand. They don't care about
Yeah.
color unless the color's green. Whereas the Democrats, the left, will try to divide people by color and try to pit them against each other. Do you believe that to be the case?
Absolutely. They're trying to sell the idea that just because someone looks like you, they're advocating in your best interest, but that's not the case at all.
Okay.
Yeah, Malcolm X,
So,
I'm paraphrasing, but he actually said somewhere in that book that beware the white liberal that's walking next to you, more
okay, he
so
did
than the
say that.
Republican. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But at first, Malcolm X, early in his life, wanted the black community and the white community to be completely separate and for the blacks just to live on their own, whatever. But he changed that towards the end. And he realized the value in, having a society that, obviously, because, it was just too hard of a line saying we're just going to have our own life. No, we're all pretty much in this together at this point in time. When you look at your high school career, because stodgy old white guys like us, we look at it and say, what is with these kids? Everybody's a victim. This woke ideology is permeating the school system. And I know we talked about it before when we asked the question, what do they want? But I want to know how much it is. Do you, every day that you go into school, do you see kids who are screaming for attention and screaming that you should call them they, them, or he, him, or different names? Is it a huge deal, or has it been oversold to us to get us scared about what's going on with our youth?
Right. So I go to school in Broward County, which is predominantly left leaning, right? And so I see it at school. I see that some of my peers, they like to be referred as, whatever they like to be referred as. And I respect it 100%, right? But, there was actually a walkout in my school district protesting against the Don't Say Gay bill, which, Governor DeSantis passed, which doesn't mention the word gay at all.
At
It's
all, right?
Yeah.
at all. It's labeled the Parental Rights and Education Bill, and I completely 100% agree with it. And I believe it's only 6 to 9 pages long. And so a school did a walkout protesting against it, and I actually spoke to a couple students that participated in the walkout. And when I was asking them questions about the actual bill, they had no idea what the
No
bill was
idea.
talking about. No
No
idea at all. They just saw on social media that people were upset about it because it was apparently anti-LGBTQ, right? And when I asked one of them, do you want a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old to be talking about, sexual identity and gender identity and whatnot in, fifth or in fourth grade? And they tell me, no, I don't think that's appropriate. Okay, so why are you protesting against this bill? I'm confused. And it's just that these kids don't take the time to actually do their research. I think social media plays a predominant role in how students are, being influenced by the media.
So I want to ask if it could. You've heard of Thomas Sowell, Briana?
Yes.
Okay, so he's my favorite economist, bar none. And he's probably more of a social economist at this point, but I'm reading his most recent book right now, Social Justice Fallacies. And I was watching a video of his, and I actually clipped it and I sent it around to a bunch of friends. Jimmy, I'm surprised I didn't send it to you, where Dave Rubin is asking him about his past. And his past was he started as a Marxist, right? He came out of Harvard as a Marxist. And it was interesting because Dave Rubin said, really? And he goes, well, Milton Friedman was a Keynesian, and he named all these other well-known conservatives that started off as one thing and evolved. And Dave Rubin said to him, so what made you change from a Marxist to a capitalist? And he had a one-word answer. He said, facts. And I thought that was so brilliant. I'll actually send it to both of you after the show because you got to see this man say this. And people like him, and I'm going to compliment you by putting you in that conversation, because for you being the age you are to think the way you do, I don't even care which side you think. Do you think they come after debate because it's one of the few places left over where young people can actually hear an opposing view and sit there and go, I might be wrong about this? Isn't that a quality of a debater, where when you lose a debate or when you hear an argument, you actually go back home and go, I got to rethink this because I should have won that and they were right? Do you think that's why they're coming after debate?
Yes, I think that debate is the most powerful tool to having discussions and changing the way people think because it makes you think about your own personal beliefs and how whether or not that aligns with what the facts truly are. Before I started doing debate, this was in eighth grade, right? Before I started competing. This was when COVID hit. We were online and we were secluded within our homes. And I had BLM in my bio, right? I was, on social media, I was seeing that the BLM protests were happening, and I felt so compelled to it until I saw the facts of what was actually happening. None of the money that was, combined through the BLM actually went into Black neighborhoods to help Black people in America. No. But, there were riots that were occurring in the name of Black Lives Matter. I don't agree with any of that. But guess what? The media wasn't showing me that aspect of what was actually happening. And so it wasn't until later when I started doing debate in ninth grade that I was looking and doing research into credible sources and seeing the other side, not just what I saw on my screen on TikTok.
So I have a quick question because one of the things about Bobby and I and the two podcasts that we have is interact with a lot of big brain people. I'm putting in this category, the fact that you're only 16 or 17 years old just completely blows me away. Is it just like, do you get good scores in, in technical stuff too, mathematics, things like that? Or are you just, is it a both broad brain thing or not? If that's a personal question, just give me one of these. But do you score well in everything?
No, I don't actually. I've actually always struggled in math. I've always done better in language arts and history and that aspect of education. Lately, I've been doing better in, mathematics, science, and whatnot because I've been having really great teachers this year. But you are right. I excel mostly in the liberal arts in that aspect.
Oh no, and that's actually what I thought you'd say because it almost seems like someone who's that gifted in eloquence and words and the facts that you have for things. It would almost be unfair if you were a math genius too. So I'm glad you're not. Again, one more quick question. But before I hand it to Bobby because we're not letting you go yet because I'm having so much fun. Would you say to yourself that you are an angry person when you think about this shit?
I used to be very emotional when having conversations. It was actually debate that helped me become more, refined when having these discussions and not getting so emotional. But I will say that when I talk on certain subjects, it does strike a chord within me, and I do feel, emotion when, talking about certain subjects, right? And so I would say that I get angry, but usually when I'm having discussions or debates, I don't let that show.
But you when your head hits the pillow at night, it doesn't race and keep you up like this shit like that, right?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Good.
So a few minutes earlier, I said empirically you're a Black person. Empirically, you're also a female. So when you see,
I hadn't noticed because we're above that, right?
Yeah, we're above it. I had to look at the evidence on this show and say, okay. No, the question I have is, so who wrote Harry Potter? I can't remember her name right now.
J.K. Rowling.
Okay, J.K. Rowling. She tweeted recently that accepting that men could, and I'm paraphrasing again, I'm terrible at quoting people exactly. So JK, I know you watch us. Please forgive me. She doesn't want to. She put on there that by accepting that transgenderism is real, and she said, I'm not talking about people wanting to identify as something else. She goes, I'm talking about men becoming women. You erase women. Where do you stand on that? I mean, I think I have an idea as a conservative where you stand on it in a general way, but as a woman, not as a conservative. Does this offend you? Does it make you feel unsafe? By the way, I hate unsafe, but go ahead. I'm going to stop.
I've struggled a lot with this topic because, growing up, I've been taught to respect others, blah, blah, right? But at a certain point, you have to question how far are people going to go. Are you familiar with, what's his name? Her name? It's Dylan Mulvaney.
You're going to get canceled, of course.
Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan
Mulvaney, right.
Mulvaney.
I am very familiar with him. Yes.
Yes. So, I feel as though it's a facade. It's a costume that he's putting on being a woman, right? Wasn't he on what was it? Some type of, I forgot
game show.
what it was.
Yeah, he's a comedian, and it's a performance art. You're right on with this shit. Yes.
Yes, I mean, it feels like a costume at this point. The idea, I feel like it contradicts the left's agenda, right? Because they're saying that you don't have to dress a certain way and identify a certain way, but then they're teaching people that if you like the color pink, you're a girl, right? And it contradicts everything to what they're saying. And so, I will respect people 100% for their choices that they make over the age of 18, right? But at a certain point it comes where it's just you're going too far and it's disrespecting other women, right? Because it seems like it's a costume.
I don't even like costume parties. To my current wife's chagrin, she'll be my last wife, by the way, so I should probably just call her my wife. Um, like we go to, she wants to dress up for Halloween. She wants to go to costume parties. We have all these friends. Our closest friends down here are a male gay couple, and they always want to have themes when they have parties and stuff. I'm not. I guess I am stereotyping, but
No, my
they'll get
brother's
a.
the same way. He's gay and he
It's
loves
like,
costumes.
yeah,
It's
we're having
something
a
I like
party,
about
and
the
the
gay
theme
community.
is
I'm fine with it.
1920s. I'm like, what? So I remember my wife's like, why don't you want to wear a costume? She's like, you can be like a gladiator, so you can be manly. I'm like, that's not what it is, but a little. But like, if I decide that I'm going to dress up like gladiator, okay, then I walk in the party and everybody's like, ooh, what are you? And I'm like, I'm gladiator. I will not submit. And then 5 minutes later, I'm in a dress and a chest plate going, so how's work? Like, it's a 5-minute thing. Dylan Mulvaney didn't drive me crazy because he was trans. He drove me crazy because he was like, now I'm a girl and it's just like pink and hair and doing dances and all this stuff. And I'm like, my wife was through the javelin in college. Is she not a girl? Like, she's still, by the way, at COD, Jimmy, she still has the hammer throw record there.
That's fantastic.
It's fantastic,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's like, that doesn't, none of that
It's all
makes
the
him a
it's
girl.
all the characteristics that women have tried to shed for the last 50 years, and all of a sudden we're honoring her for being, looking like Jackie O. The whole thing was absurd. But you were going to go with the
Well,
question. I'm
what I was
sorry.
going to say with the whole Matt Walsh thing, and Matt Walsh is a little religious for me, but I do enjoy some of his stuff. And his whole thing about what is a woman rings very true to me, because to Dylan Mulvaney, a woman is pink and bubbles and rings and dancing and all this stuff that I don't see in every woman I know. And that's why I asked if it offended you. I mean, I understand the thing where you grew up to respect people. And I was taught to respect elders and stop there. And I don't mean my father actually said stop there. My father said to me, respect is earned, it's not given. And he said this in Italian in a very vulgar way, but he basically said, respect is earned. It's not something you just give somebody. Okay. When they earn it, you give it back. And you treat them with respect in the initial meeting and see how they act. And after that, you don't respect them at all. My father's the kind of guy who always said that, if it's not your dime, don't take it. But if it's your dime, beat the shit out of the guy for it because it's your dime. And I feel the same way on almost everything like that. So I guess the question becomes, when you say you're taught to respect somebody, do you just start off from a position of respect, and then if they don't earn it, do you pull it back or do you walk away?
I'm going to take into what you said into account from now on, that respect is earned, right? But I like to,
Well,
give
that's
everyone
I'm honored by that. I really am.
yeah,
Thank
yeah. That made me think, I want to respect people, but if it's not reciprocated, then why should I, you know, continue that, right? And respect that. What you're saying, I would say that I'm the type of person not to walk away, but not to perpetuate this, an argument, right? I don't like arguing. I like having, meaningful discussions, right? And so, a couple years ago, I was a tomboy in middle school, and now if I were a tomboy, people would tell me that, well, maybe you're a boy. What does that mean? Right?
And I have to say really quick, I want to clarify something. And I know you get this, Briana, but I want to clarify for people who are watching who are going to get on me for a lot of things I said in this show. If someone doesn't earn your respect, it doesn't mean that you shit on them. It just means that you walk away. Like, I'm done with you. Jimmy and I shit on each other constantly. There's not many people I respect as much as I respect Jim. I don't like him, but
Well, we punch each other all the time.
Yeah, he's a fair guy, he's a smart guy, and he demands respect from people he interacts with. But if I don't respect somebody, to me, they're just out of my life. That's just, we're done.
I have a question. Do you watch the show Suits?
No.
Oh, it's a
Do
great
you,
show.
Bobby?
Yeah, it's
Great
a
show.
fantastic show.
Okay, and it's back to the Halloween thing because
Yeah.
I didn't want to wear a costume to this party 2 weeks ago, so I dressed as Harvey Specter in this sharp as hell gray suit with a 3-piece pocket square. So at least as soon as the initial I'm Harvey Specter from Suits, then I'm at least looking sharp and not in some sort of goddamn bunny costume. But that's not my question. Okay, so you mentioned Briana before about how far people go. I have this theory, and I want to know what you think. The notion of biological men competing in women's sports. I don't think there's anybody anywhere who thinks that's a good idea.
Beat him, by the way, but go ahead.
Really, I don't think there's anyone who genuinely thinks that's a good and fair policy. What I think it's much more likely is that they're just trying to see how far they can push the goddamn line to see what they can get away with. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, like you were saying, I can't understand how anyone can say that a man should compete with women. Biologically, it just doesn't make sense on any plane. And so what you're saying is actually interesting. I do think they're trying to push the buttons to see how far they can get with this. Especially I've been really looking into education wise and how, sexual orientation and gender identity should be implemented in the education system. And I don't think it should be at all because, whether or not you like it, it's political, right? And it's not something that you can introduce into the school system, right? That's for a parent and their child to discuss, right? And so I think the idea that if we're not speaking about it in schools, suddenly we're all bigots and, against LGBTQ community or LGBTQ.
Don't try to get it right. We pride ourselves on not getting it right because they're going to add another letter tomorrow, just to be clear. Yeah.
I got one last question for you, Briana. We've kept you like an hour. Is it? Yeah, it's almost an hour, but I'd like to keep you longer than this. But what is the most critical issue in your mind going forward for people your age?
Debate, right? Having open discussions and not being afraid to have your own views challenged, and also leaning off social media because believe it or not, social media influences you one way or another, right? And I've been victim to this beforehand and probably still today, right? And so you have to check your own beliefs before you enforce it on others or in an act of certainty say that you're right and you're wrong, right? I think the key to young people is having discussions where the facts are present.
I'm going to finish with this, and I will tell you this, and I'm not joking. You've been the best part of my week. I had a shitty day. It was CP. It was a busy day. I've been working for 13 hours, and this was a breath of fresh air. I'm going to go home with a smile on my face because I'm going to think that all the youth out, and I love the kids I coach. I've coached for 25 years. I love them as individuals. I worry about the things that are happening, but I'm very pleased that you're out there and you're going to keep swinging, and I know you are.
Can I just add, I think you're the most important guest we've ever had.
I think so too. More important than Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
Remember us. By the way, remember us when you're a big deal. And remember, there's guys like us gave a shit when, you're already a big deal. So
I'm going to actually text that to Vivek. I'm going to say we just had a better guest than you.
A better guest than you, yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Briana.